Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So Blizzard dropped new hero talent trees, so today we're going to be talking about some of the ones that I feel the most comfortable talking about. So in today's video, we're going to start with Elune's Chosen. This is the tree that is going out for balance and Guardian Druids. Now Blizzard dropped a total of 8 trees today, so a lot of content being farmed out by Blizzard in their world on their sphere today. Now, the ones that I'm going to be making videos on are going to be Elune's Chosen, Wildstalker, Herald of the Sun, or Templar, whichever one is Prot Ret. I know a little bit about those specs. I feel comfortable doing that. And I'll take a look at Warrior Colossus, simply because I do have some experience playing Arms Warrior. So I kind of want to just see it, because Warrior is always a class that I'm just curious about, even if I don't necessarily dedicate myself to playing it. So I'll be doing videos on all of these over the next little bit, but we're going to be starting off with Elune's Chosen. And the big reason for it, if you know me, is because of this right here. It is the tree for Guardian Druids. Now, we know that the Guardian Druids are going to be paired up now, obviously with Balance, and then also with Feral Druid, which both I think make sense. With the Laser Bear builds becoming a thing again in Shadowlands, I think this has been a kind of a straightforward thought process. Balance obviously does a lot of arcane damage in their kit. And then, of course, the physical build bleeds with Thrash and stuff that tie very closely to Feral. So it just makes sense to have these kind of mix and mingle. So we're just going to start by taking a look at this tree. And I have not seen almost any of these talents. I have no idea what's going to be in this. I'm going to look at this mostly from a Guardian perspective, because that's a spec that I feel like I know the best. But I'll take a look at it from a Balance perspective as well. I'm not the most experienced Balance Druid. It's a spec that I played a ton of early in WoW's history. And every time I come back to Druid, I always try to learn it, but depending on its playstyle, I may or may not like it. So we'll see, but I may not be the best arbiter for Balanced Druids. I'm going to recommend folks like Tettles and others that you would recommend for that. But for Guardian Druids, I feel pretty confident in my ability. Even though I haven't played Druid at all, actually, this patch, I've still very much kept up with Guardian changes. So we're going to start with the top of the tree, and that's Boundless Moonlight. Full Moon Call for balance. You get Full Moon calling down 2 minor moons that deal astral damage and generate astral power. Cool. Lunar Beam now causes you to leech life equal to 10% of all damage dealt to enemies within the beam. So Lunar Beam for Guardian Druid has historically been a pretty weak talent, and they're just, at least I know in Season 1 and Season 2 really, there were just other talents that outshined it. Particularly in Season 2 when the physical bear build became very, 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 very powerful. But I think this adds the potential to go like a true full arcane thing, where things like Mangle and Thrash and Maul and Raise and things like that are basically there to give you a damage variety, but you're going to be doing a lot of your damage is going to be focused in on heavy arcane damage, and use your physical abilities to basically just flesh out the kit a little bit. For both specializations, Fury of Elune now ends with a flash of energy, blasting enemies nearby for astral damage. Now, I'm curious as to how Bear gets Fury of Elune, because it's a Moonkin talent. I'll hold judgment. Alright, we'll go down to the left side here. Moon Guardian. So Moonfire and Starfire generate 2 astral power, and free automatic Moonfires from Galactic Guardian generate 5 rage. So you get 13 rage off your Moonfires, which, if you still take Galactic Guardian, let me pull. We're gonna grab ourselves the Bear tree. Talent trees, Druid, and Guardian. So Lunar Beam down here in this corner here. Let me just full screen this. So I'm curious as to how we're going to get, Galactic Guardian. That's what I was looking for. Actually, this is a bad idea. It's going to be a pain. So Galactic Guardian basically gives you 8 rage, extra damage. And then with this, it's if Galactic Guardian remains the way that it is, you're going to get 13 rage. So it's a lot of rage generation for the arcane build, which typically lacks good rage generation. So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. But of course, these talents on these first rows generally are the most boring talents in the entire tree, and then you go from there. Lunar Amplification. Each non-arcane damaging ability you use increases the damage of your next arcane damaging ability by up to 3%, stacking 3 times. So for every thrash, every maul, or every thrash, every maul, every raise, every mangle, and every swipe that you use, you're going to get 9% more damage on your Moonfire, as an example. Look at our choice node. Oh, and for balance, this will be things like you cast Wrath, you cast Sunfire. So when you're in like Solar Eclipse, you're gonna do this, and then the next time you have to refresh your dots or something like that, or hit a Starfire, or maybe even a Star Surge or Starfall, they're gonna obviously do bigger damage. So a little something extra to track for balance. For Bear, I don't think you're really gonna think about this talent too much. You're just gonna do your rotation and hit it when you can. Let's look at our first choice node. We get Stellar Command, increases the damage of Full Moon and Lunar Beam, and then also gets the Fury of Elune damage increase, so just a straight damage increase across the board. Versus Lunar Calling, where Starfire deals increased damage to its primary target, but no longer triggers Solar Eclipse. What? That's gotta be an AoE thing. And I don't even think that's weird. Thrash now deals arcane damage, and its damage is increased by 12%. So a little bit of anti-synergy here, I think, with Lunar Amplification. Like, you're using Thrash on cooldown. It's one of your best tools for AoE threat. It's one of your best tools for maintaining single target threat. And there are builds where you can get like Thrash stacked up to 5 times here. And you're getting all of this. So like, I think this combined with Lunar Calling is a little bit of anti-synergy. And same thing with Lunar Calling. Like, I think it's probably useful in AoE. You don't play Solar Eclipse except for on bosses in Mythic Plus, so you're always in Lunar Eclipse trying to maximize your Starfire splash damage. So I think there's some value there, but I think just Stellar Command is just going to be better. Like, you're getting a flat damage increase on Full Moon and Lunar Beam and Fury of Elune, which I still don't know how Bear's going to get, probably through here. But I don't know if I like Lunar Amplification and Lunar Calling. Although Thrash on its own, Thrash dealing arcane damage, I think is very interesting for like a full-on Laser Bear build, and it makes you think of talents like Flashing Claws. Could obviously play a part in this, where you maybe drop something like Rend and Tear and Ursoc's Fury to go into like Flashing Claws to get extra damage, and then you get this extra damage. You just go into full Thrash build. Potentially pretty interesting. Lunar Insight, Moonfire deals 10% more damage. Cool, both specs use it. Very boring, but again, I think everything on this is going to be really boring. Atmospheric Exposure. Enemies damaged by Full Moon, Fury of Elune, or Lunar Beam take 4% increased damage from you for 6 seconds. Again, very boring. Good for AoE, good for single target. Like, both are just fine, and that's the biggest thing. Now, the question about Lunar Beam is that are they ever going to make it travel like Fury of Elune does? Because right now, Lunar Beam just goes into a spot. So if you have to pull a pack out for Sanguine, for example, you've lost all that damage, and it sucks. So I'm hoping they do something with Lunar Beam to make it so that it follows the Druid or follows your target, so that you can still get that extra damage out, even if you have to move. All right, next choice node, the Light of Elune. Moonfire has a damage to call down Fury of Elune to follow your target for 3 seconds and generate HT and Astral Power over its duration. That explains how we get the Fury of Elune. Or you get your Astral Insight Incarnation. So you get Chosen of Elune and Incarnation Guardian of Ursoc, increase arcane damage from spells and abilities by 10% while active. Convoke duration and number of spells cast increased by 25%. I think you probably, for Bear, you'll always take Light of Elune. Guardian, Incarn Guardian of Ursoc, which is this ability here. It's the top one. Basically allows you, gets you the benefits of Berserk, AoE Mangle, maximum health boost, 30 second duration, and then you grab Ursoc's Guidance, which gives you cooldown reduction on it. You're grabbing things like, your Berserk talents here, which they aren't discussed here, but they all give different benefits. I don't think Astral Insight Incarnation is a good pick, because Bear, one of the big problems with Bear, especially in Shadowlands and really kind of in early Dragonflight, was its reliance on Incarn. So putting power into Incarn and not spreading it out is something that I think is always unhealthy for Bear. So I just see myself taking Light of Elune all the time. Listening Fur. Bear form and Moonkin form reduce arcane damage taken by 6% and all other magic damage taken by 3%. Cool. I like this. This is a good defensive node. Bears, just like, well, most tanks are pretty weak to magic damage. You know, obviously like VDH and Prop Paladin, not so much, but like I know Brewmaster is, Bear is, those are the two tanks I'm the most familiar with. And they're both pretty susceptible to just getting cracked by magic damage. So this is good. I like this. And Moonkin getting it just flat is really good because like Moonkin is squishy as hell right now. All right. 4 Choice Nodes on this. So we get Moondust. They get a slow, or you get Elune's Grace, which uses Wild Charge, incurs a 3-second shorter cooldown. I think this is going to be very much a play by the fight type thing. I think in most Mythic Plus scenarios, you're going to want to grab Moondust as a bear because you're going to see a 30% slow on a thing that you're going to have up on as many targets as possible. I think is really good. It's a true kiting tool along with Ursol's Vortex. So I really like that they have made the decision to do that. Now, obviously, on weeks like Sanguine Week, having a big old slow is probably pretty bad. So you're going to want to grab something like Elune's Grace. In Raid, depending on the type of mobility required in the fight, grabbing Elune's Grace is probably going to be better than grabbing Moondust, where most bosses and most mob spawn by bosses don't get impacted by the slow. So just having a little bit more mobility in a raid situation, good. I like this choice note. This is a good choice note in my opinion. Below it, we get Arcane Affinity. All arcane damage from your spells and abilities is increased by 3%. Cool. Your arcane abilities for balance will, and with Lunation, your arcane abilities reduce the cooldown of Fury of Elune by 2 seconds and the cooldown of your moon spells by 1 second. Okay, so you kind of just always making sure you have a moon going. So you want to use moon on cooldown, and then Starfire and Arcane and Moonfire are, I'm assuming this is going to proc off of like Star Surge as well, because it does arcane and nature damage. So Astral. Go. And then your arcane abilities reduce the cooldown of Lunar Beam by 3 seconds. This is going to be, for Bear at least, it's going to completely depend on the tuning of Lunar Beam. If Lunar Beam is actually good, I mean, in this build, you're kind of going to have to be forced to take it. But if Lunar Beam is actually good and valuable, now Lunar Beam right now, like I said, gives you, it does increasing your mastery by a percentage. It deals damage, arcane damage, and heals you over 8 seconds. Like, I haven't played with Lunar Beam in a long time, so I don't know how wide the radius is. So like, having Lunar Beam up more often could be good, especially because, you know, it obviously plays into giving you a bunch of leech here, 10% of all damage dealt. It gives you something like, where is it at? Here, you get more, you know, more often you're getting this window of extra damage up. You're getting, you know, so there is some synergies here. I think you probably, for safety purposes, take Arcane Affinity. But depending on how good Lunar Beam is, you can grab Lunation and it won't be a problem. Bottom of the tree, the Eternal Moon. So for balance, you get full moon, new moon, and half moon. I also call down 1 minor moon, so a little bit of splash damage, I'm assuming. For Guardian, Lunar Beam now increases mastery by an additional 8%. So right now it's percentage based off of your current mastery, 21 equal, you know, the percentage there. So it does vary a little bit, but you're getting basically a free 8% additional on that. Deals 30% increased damage and lasts 3 seconds longer. So currently it lasts 8 seconds, so now you're talking 11 seconds. It's a little awkward on its timing. I imagine Lunar Beam would probably need to be buffed in its duration to be 12 seconds and go to 15, or go 10 and be 13. Again, a little bit weird, but could be done. And then for both specializations, Fury of Elune, the Flash of Energy now generates 6 Astral Power or 6 Rage, and its damage is increased by 50%. So for this, does astral damage and then also gives you rage generation. Anytime Guardian Druid can get more resource generation, that's generally what makes Guardian Druid really good. So the fact that this is back in the mix a little bit, and it looks like they're really focusing on doing something with the Laser Bear build to help increase its rage generation, I think it's really smart. Overall, as a Bear Druid fan, I actually am a fan of this tree. I think these two talents probably need to be investigated a little bit because they feel anti-synergistic. You never feel like you're going to maximize Lunar Amplification if you also are dealing a Thrash that does, it deals arcane damage, so you're not going to get that extra damage on it. And then in something like Incarn, where you're spamming Thrash like basically every cooldown or every other cooldown, you're never going to get any benefit from Lunar Amplification. So I think there's needs to be some thought process added into that. Go from there and see what they can do. But as a Bear Druid, I think this is a really good tree in concept. I'll be very curious to see what the Feral and Bear tree does. I imagine that's going to focus a lot more on the physical damage builds. But as someone that has always been a big fan of Laser Bear builds, I think this is a very cool talent tree. I really like the ideas that they put in behind it. Nothing groundbreaking. I think getting Fury of Elune is cool. I think that it doesn't really do a ton in the way of defensive. Glistening Fur does something there. But a lot of this focuses on just giving extra damage and a little bit of extra rage regeneration with Moon Guardian, potentially Lunar Beam, but then also the Eternal Moon. So like there's a little bit of resource generation built in. There's a lot of damage built in, not a lot defensive built in, and nothing in utility wise built in. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I want to see what the other tree does, because if the other tree doesn't necessarily crush damage, but does a lot of cool things defensively and utility wise, then I think we're going to have a conversation, and it's going to depend at that point. Then your talent tree choice is going to depend entirely on, does Bear live? If it lives well without needing a hero talent tree, then something like Elune's Chosen is going to be very good, because now you just become a damage machine. If the spec is struggling to live and the other tree with Feral does a lot of defensive benefit, this tree is going to see no play, because it all outside of a little bit of magic damage reduction, it doesn't really have anything defensively and does nothing utility wise. Now Druid admittedly already has some decent utility. Urso's Vortex, Innervate if it's needed. Nature's Vigil has been nerfed, kind of gutted. Obviously Mark of the Wild and a Battle Res, all very, very valuable. So like you could argue that they don't really need to do anything utility wise, but I'd love to see something that like amplifies the utility or makes like In-Cap Roar or something like that very valuable for a Druid to use. Go from there. So that's the end of this tree, guys, with the Elune's Chosen. So like I said, I think this is a great tree. Overall, I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Feral and Balance tree Feral and Guardian tree looks like when that one is announced and released. But I think this is off to a good start for Bear Druids. For Balance Druids, I think this is probably the better one of the two between Keeper of the Grove. But I'm not really digging into Balance Druid too much right now. I'm focusing a lot on Guardian. I mean, Balance is still probably my favorite caster, because I've just struggled to find a caster that I could play that isn't like, just I get bored with after a while. So like for me, it is like a spec that I am still very much paying attention to, but not so much that I like gonna dive in deep into it. My gut tells me this feels a little bit better. It makes Moonkins a damage powerhouse, but doesn't solve the problems that they have defensively. Keeper of the Grove does more to solve the problems defensively, but does it in ways that I think are a little bit awkward for balance. So I don't know. I'll definitely be checking out some Balance Druid experts and seeing what they think. My opinion is that I'm probably going to go with Keeper of the Grove, just because 8% damage reduction on regrowth is like really good compared to 3% magic damage reduction, like, and 6% on arcane damage. Like arcane damage, the arcane damage aspect of it is only going to be very like specifically useful on certain mob types, and that's going to entirely depend on how they design the dungeons or whatever type of damage they decide to put into a dungeon or a raid encounter. So anyways, guys, that's my thoughts on the Elune's Chosen tree. I think it's a pretty good one for Bear. Okay, I think for balance, I think it probably needs a little bit more tweaking on the balance side, but for Bear, I'd like to see more defensive stuff put in, something that maybe enhances a utility option or two. But if you're looking for something that's just going to increase the total amount of damage you're doing and the rage generation that you get off of it, Elune's Chosen is going to be great for you. Until then, hope you all stay safe. Hope you're all enjoying yourself. You're having fun. You keep on gaming, and we'll see you next time.